Welcome, and thank you for joining me tonight. As you settle in, let the weight of the day slip away. Tonight, we turn to a legend that has crossed oceans and centuries, a tale of waters that promise what no mortal hand can hold, eternal youth. This is the story of the fountain of youth, whispered in shadows, sought in hope, and remembered in dreams. So close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let the story guide you forward. Whispers of eternal waters. It begins with a voice, not one voice alone, but many gathered around firelight, huddled close as the night stretches long. The crackle of flame flickers against weathered faces, casting shadows deep across their eyes. They are sailors, wanderers, dreamers, and their words are of the sea, of storms, of stars, and of a fountain. They speak of waters hidden far beyond the horizon, flowing clear and endless, carrying a power no man can command. Waters that restore what time has taken, waters that turn age back into youth, waters that promise life unbroken. Life eternal, the whispers are soft at first, told as tales to pass the night. But in the silence between, you can feel it, the weight of belief. For every man who laughs at the story, another stares into the fire with eyes that burn with wonder. Could it be true? Could such a place exist? The legend spreads not only by word, but by ink. Old maps etched with symbols no one fully understands. Notes scrawled in the margins of journals by men who swore they glimpsed it. An island shrouded in mist, an inland spring that glowed even in darkness. Most maps end in blank spaces, their edges curling where the world was still unknown. And there, beyond the edge, lies the fountain. The story crosses oceans. It finds its way into royal courts, where kings and queens listen with hungry ears. It stirs among merchants, who dream of trading not gold or spice, but years themselves. It calls to wanderers, who see in the tale not only treasure, but salvation. For what man has not longed, in quiet moments, for youth never to fade, for time never to take? But the fountain is not easily found. It hides where few dare to travel, past storms that break masts, past jungles thick with shadows, past deserts where the horizon burns. It is said to vanish before eyes that seek it in greed, to appear only to those who carry the heart to see beyond what is seen. And so, across centuries, across countless shores, the whispers remain. Around fires, in taverns, on ships rocked by, waves in the pages of crumbling books, the legend lingers, not as a tale of kings alone, nor of sailors alone, but of mankind itself, the endless search for what lies just beyond reach. The fire crackles, the night deepens, the voices fade into silence, but the story remains, carried on the wind, drifting across waters, waiting. Somewhere the fountain flows, unseen, untouched, eternal. And in the hearts of those who listen, the journey begins. The map of secrets, long after the fires burn down to embers, long after the sailors' voices fade into silence, the whispers remain. And where whispers linger, men begin to draw. The first map is crude, a scrap of parchment, edgy as frayed, ink smudged by salt and rain. It bears not the certainty of roads or kingdoms, but the suggestion of seas, of islands, of coastlines that may or may not exist. At its edge, where the world itself seems to fall away, is a symbol, a small circle, marked with lines like rays. Of the sun, no words explain it, no measure defines it, but those who see it know it is the fountain. More maps follow, some etched in careful hand by scholars who never left their chambers, drawing from stories carried on the lips of sailors. Some scrawled in haste by captains at sea, lines jagged with the sway of the ship, notes scribbled in margins like confessions. Mist at dawn, waters glowing, voices in the jungle. Each map differs, each path uncertain, yet each points to the same truth, that somewhere, hidden beyond the horizon, lies the fountain of youth. The maps pass from hand to hand, from ship to ship, from kingdom to kingdom. Kings clutch them with trembling fingers. Their eyes alight not with conquest, but with desperation. Merchants guard them in secret, dreaming of riches beyond gold, years themselves sold as treasure. Wanderers trace them by candlelight, there, hearts burning with restless longing. But the maps are more than lines on parchment. Look closely, and you will see symbols drawn into their corners. A serpent coiled around a cup, a bird with wings outstretched, its feathers like flames, a tree whose roots curl into a spiral, reaching not down into earth, but back upon themselves. Symbols that speak not of distance, but of meaning. Clues not only for the eyes, but for the spirit. For the fountain is not guarded by distance alone. It is hidden in riddles, in signs, in truths only those willing to see may find. And so the maps are less guides than invitations. Invitations to dream, to risk, to seek. One map rests now upon a table, its parchment spread wide beneath the glow of lantern light. A sailor bends over it, his hands steady as he traces the ink, his lips moving in silence. He sees the coastlines, the seas, the strange symbols curling in the margins. But more than this, he feels the polar current running through the parchment, carrying him beyond what is drawn, beyond what is known. The lantern flickers, the sea murmurs beyond the walls, and in the silence the sailor whispers a vow. He will follow the map, he will find the fountain. The ink glows faintly in the lamplight, as though alive, as though listening. And in that moment, the journey truly begins. The voyage begins. The harbour was still before dawn. the masts of ships rising like dark spires against a sky painted faintly with stars. The sea lay calm, its surface glimmering with the reflection of the moon, its breath steady and deep. Men moved quietly along the docks, their boots soft upon the wood, their voices hushed. For though they carried rope and sail, though they loaded barrels of grain and casks of water, what they bore most heavily was silence, the silence of expectation, of destiny, of legend. At the center of it all stood one ship. Its hull was weathered by years, its sails patched by many hands, its decks scarred by storms endured and survived. Yet tonight it gleamed faintly in the moonlight, as though the sea itself had chosen it for the journey. The map, carefully folded and sealed, lay in the captain's cabin, waiting. But in truth, the map was no longer parchment alone, it lived. In the hearts of those who stepped aboard, each man carrying the image of the fountain as though it had been etched into his soul. The ropes were cast off. The sails unfurled, catching the breath of the wind. The ship creaked, groaned, then moved, slipping gently from the harbor into the wide embrace of the sea. Behind, the city lights flickered faintly, then faded into shadow. Ahead, only water. Stretched, endless and deep, its horizon hidden by mist. Days passed. The ship cut steadily across the waves, guided by stars that glittered like scattered jewels in the sky. By night, the crew lay upon the deck, their eyes tracing constellations, their breaths rising and falling in rhythm with the sea. By day, the sun warmed their backs, the wind filled their sails, and the horizon beckoned ever onward. But the sea is never without test. One evening, as the sun sank low and painted the waves in gold, clouds gathered in the distance, dark, heavy, silent at first and growing, swelling, thickening, until the sky itself seemed to fold in upon them. The wind rose sharp, the sails strained, the ship groaned as waves towered high. Rain fell, stinging against skin, blinding the eyes. The crew clung to ropes, their voices lost to the roar of the storm. Yet through it all, the captain held the map close, his eyes steady, his heart unshaken. And in the flash of lightning, in the crash of thunder, he swore he saw it faint lines upon the horizon. The shadow of land, half hidden in mist. The storm broke, then passed. The sea calmed, its surface glimmering once more beneath the pale light of dawn. The crew lay weary but unbroken, their eyes drawn to the horizon where the mist lingered still. And in its folds, faint but certain, the promise of the unknown waited dot. The voyage pressed on. The stars guided them, the sea carried them, the map whispered in silence. And though no man spoke it aloud, each knew the truth. They were closer now. Closer to the island, closer to the fountain. The waves murmured against the hull, the sails whispered in the wind, and the ship moved steadily forward into the waiting mist. The island of shadows, The mist thickened as dawn broke, rolling across the sea like a great curtain, veiling the horizon in silver. The ship slowed, its sails slackening as if the very air had grown heavy. Voices hushed, boots stilled, hands rested on ropes without thought, for every eye turned forward, every breath caught. As the mist began to part, there, rising from the sea, was land. Not the jagged cliffs of familiar coasts, nor the low slopes of islands well known to sailors, but something different. Its shoreline curved wide, its sands pale as bone, its trees tall and dark, their leaves heavy with dew that shimmered faintly in the light. Beyond the shore, shadows stretched deep, forests dense and tangled, their paths swallowed by vine and silence. And farther still, half hidden by fog, rose ruins. They were vast, older than memory, their stones carved with patterns worn smooth by centuries. Pillars leaned against one another, arches stood broken, walls cracked and swallowed by creeping ivy. Yet even in ruin there was majesty, the weight of something once great, something built not for men alone, but for eternity. The sailors whispered among themselves, their words quick, uncertain. No map had shown this clearly, no tale had spoken of ruins, and yet, as their eyes lingered, none could deny it. This was the place. This was where the fountain must be. The ship grounded gently upon the sand, its hull steady, its sails lowering with a sigh. The crew disembarked in silence, their boots sinking into soft earth, their eyes wide. The air was different here, thicker, sweeter, heavy with scents of jasmine and rain-soaked soil. Birds called from the canopy, low and haunting, their cries. Echoing through the trees, the wind stirred faintly, carrying whispers that sounded almost like words. They moved inland, their steps cautious, their voices hushed as though afraid to break whatever spell lingered here. The ruins loomed larger, their stones cooled beneath trailing hands, their carvings faint but alive. Spirals, symbols of water, figures bending towards streams that flowed upward instead of down. The same signs they had seen on the map, now carved into walls older than time itself. One ruin rose higher than the rest, a tower broken at its crown, its base swallowed by moss and vine. Within, the floor lay cracked, pools of rainwater gathering in its hollows, shimmering faintly with light that seemed too steady to be mere reflection. The crew bent low, their fingers brushing the surface. The water was cool, sweet upon the tongue, but it did not change them. It was not the fountain, not yet. Deeper into the forest they went. The canopy grew denser, the air dimmer, the path twisting and shifting as though alive. Roots rose like steps, vines hung like curtains, the earth damp beneath their feet. Each step felt heavy, not with weariness, but with weight, as though the island itself pressed upon them, watching, testing. The captain paused at the base of a fallen arch, its stones etched with spirals curling inward upon themselves. He laid a hand upon the carving, his breath slow, his eyes steady. He did not speak, but within him stirred the same truth he had felt upon the sea. In the storm, they were not the first to walk here, and they would not be the last. The forest deepened, the ruins thickened, the whispers grew louder. At times, the sailors swore they saw movement in the corner of their vision, figures passing between trees, shapes bending behind stones, gone as quickly as they appeared. No footsteps followed, no voices rose, and yet the feeling remained. They were not alone at last. They came upon a clearing. The trees pulled back, the ruins formed a circle, and in its center stood a pool. Its waters were still, its surface dark, its depth unfathomable. Around it lay carvings of figures kneeling, their hands cupped, their faces lifted in joy. The sailors fell silent, their breaths held, their hearts racing. But when they touched the water, it was only water, cool, clean, sweet, but mortal still. The fountain remained hidden, deeper still within the island's heart. The sun sank low, painting the ruins in amber light, the forest alive with cores of unseen creatures. The crew lit torches, their glow flickering across stone and vine, and pressed on. The path narrowed, the air thickened, the island closed around them, and in the hush of night, beneath stars barely visible through the canopy, the sailors carried with them the same thought, the same truth, the same fire. The fountain was here. They could feel it, waiting, watching. Guardians of the path. The night deepened, wrapping the forest in shadow, though the sailors' torches flickered with steady flame. The path narrowed further, twisting between roots that rose like walls, vines that fell heavy as curtains. The air thickened, carrying scents of earth, of flowers unseen, of something older, the smell of rain that had not yet fallen. The sailors moved carefully, their boots sinking into moss, their breaths sloughed in the hush. But soon the silence shifted, not empty, not absent, but alive. The forest listened, the ruins watched, and in the spaces between the crackle of torches and the shuffle of feet, something else stirred. At first, it was sound, a rustle where no wind blew, a whisper where no voice should be. The sailors paused, turning toward the trees, their eyes wide. Shapes lingered in the corners of vision, figures half-formed, neither shadow nor flesh. When the torches turned toward them, they vanished, dissolving into mist. When the flames turned away, they returned, silent and still. Then it was sight. Animals emerged from the undergrowth, a stag with antlers vast as branches, its eyes glowing faintly in the torchlight. A bird with wings wide as sails, feathers shimmering with silver. A serpent coiled along a fallen stone, its scales glistening like water itself. Each creature watched, unmoving, unthreatening, but unblinking, as if they were not beasts at all, but guardians, sentinels of the path. The captain stepped forward, his hand resting upon Excalibur's absence at his side, for he carried no such sword, no blade of destiny. Only the map folded close to his chest, and a steady breath of belief. He did not draw steel, though others shifted nervously, hands brushing hilts. Instead, he bowed his head, his voice low but clear. We seek not to steal, but to find. Not to take, but to witness. If this place is sacred, we honor it. The forest listened. The stag lowered its great head. The serpent uncoiled and slipped silently into the water. The bird spread its wings, lifted into the air, and vanished into shadow. The path cleared. The sailors pressed on, hearts unsteady but lighter. They understood the guardians were not meant to frighten nor to harm. They were watchers, testing not strength but intent. As they moved deeper, the tests grew stranger. A stone arch stood before them, its surface carved with spirals that twisted inward. Beyond it, the forest shimmered faintly, as though seen through water. One sailor stepped through and vanished. The crew gasped, their torches flaring, but then a voice called out. He stood only steps away, but he had changed. His hair darker, his face younger, his eyes bright. The sailors rushed forward, but as they crossed the arch, the vision faded. The man was the same as before, aged and weary. Only the memory remained, a glimpse of what could be. Later, they found a pool, its surface still, its depth unfathomable. Each man who gazed into it saw not his reflection, but his desire. One saw himself crowned in jewels. Another saw himself seated in quiet peace, his years unbroken. Another saw nothing at all, only darkness. The captain knelt, his reflection showing only himself, aged and weathered, yet unafraid. The pool rippled, then stilled, and the path continued. The deeper they went, the more they felt the truth. The fountain was not guarded by walls, nor by swords, nor by armies. It was guarded by mirrors, reflections of the heart, tests of the soul. To reach it, one did not need strength, but honesty. For the waters did not answer lies. At last, they came upon another clearing, wider than before, the trees pulling back to reveal a circle of stone. At its center stood statues, tall and solemn, carved from black rock, figures of men and women, their hands cupped as though holding water, their faces calm, their eyes closed. Each statue bore an inscription at its feet, words too worn to read, yet the meaning clear. These were the seekers who had come before. The sailors stood in silence, the torches flickering, the air heavy. The guardians had watched them, Tess had measured them, and still the path stretched forward. Somewhere beyond these statues, deeper in the island's heart, the fountain flowed. They could feel it in their bones, in their breaths, in the rhythm of the earth beneath their feet. The captain looked back at his men, their faces pale but steady, their eyes fixed upon the shadows ahead. He lifted the map, its ink shimmering faintly in the torchlight, and spoke softly. Not far now. And with that, they stepped forward into the waiting dark. The labyrinth of stone and vine. The clearing of statues faded behind them, swallowed by shadow and mist as the sailors pressed onward. Their torches flickered against stone walls that rose suddenly from the earth. Not cliffs, not natural, but built. Ruins once more, though greater than those they had seen before. Arches stretched overhead, their crowns broken, their stones bound with vines thick as ropes. Columns lined the path, their carvings faint but still alive, spirals curling inward. Streams flowing upward, figures bending toward waters unseen. The sailors moved slowly, their boots echoing softly against stone. The air here was cooler, damp with the scent of moss and rain-soaked earth. Each breath carried the weight of age, as though the walls themselves exhaled memories. And in that breath, the men felt it. They had crossed into something deeper. Something not simply ruin, but design. This was no city fallen to time. This was a labyrinth. The paths twisted, turned, narrowed. Vines hung like curtains, roots rose like steps, stones shifted underfoot. At times, the torches revealed carvings. That repeated again and again. The serpent coiled, the bird in flight, the tree curling back upon itself. Symbols they had seen on the map, now etched into the very bones of the labyrinth. The captain paused at an intersection where three paths opened, each one swallowed by shadow. The sailors shifted nervously, their eyes darting. Which way? The map offered no answer, only the faint glow of symbols in its margins. He held it to the torchlight, the spiral shimmered faintly, curling inward. He turned toward the leftmost path, where the walls narrowed into a tight bend that curved like the spiral itself, and so they walked. The labyrinth shifted around. Then, sometimes the walls opened wide, revealing chambers where pools of water shimmered faintly in torchlight. Sometimes they closed tight, forcing the sailors to turn sideways, their torches pressed close to stone. Whispers followed them, soft, indistinct, as though carried by water dripping through hidden cracks. At times, the whispers seemed to form words, though none could agree on what they said. Hours passed, or perhaps minutes. Time felt different here, stretching and folding like the carvings themselves. The sailors marked their path with chalk upon the stone, yet the marks vanished. When they turned back, swallowed by moss, by vine, by silence. It was as though the labyrinth did not wish to be mapped, as though it shifted with each step, alive in its own design. At last, they entered a vast chamber. Its ceiling soared high above, lost in shadow, its walls lined with carvings deeper, sharper than any before. In its center rose a pillar of stone, upon which a basin rested empty, dry. The sailors pressed forward, their eyes wide, their hands trembling. Could this be it? But when they touched the basin, they felt only dust, not the fountain, not. Yet the captain bent low, brushing his fingers across the carvings at the base of the pillar. There, beneath layers of moss, he found words etched in symbols faint but legible. The waters are not given to those who seek the end of time, but to those who accept its flow. He spoke the words aloud, his voice steady. The chamber fell silent. The torches dimmed, then flared as if in answer. The sailors stood still, their breaths caught, their hearts heavy. The labyrinth was not a place to be solved, but a place to be understood. They pressed on, deeper still. The paths narrowed, the air thickened, the vines grew heavier. At times, they swore the walls moved, closing, opening, leading them not where they wished, but where they were meant to go. Exhaustion pressed upon them, their bodies weary, their minds frayed by endless twists and turns. Yet always, the captain led forward, guided not by map, but by instinct, by the hum he felt beneath the stone dot at last. After what felt like days, though no sun-marked time, they emerged into another chamber. This one was smaller, its ceiling low, its walls close. But at its center, water shimmered faintly, dripping from roots above into a shallow pool carved from stone. The sailors fell to their knees, their hands cupped, their lips trembling. The water was cool, sweet, refreshing. But even as they drank, they knew this was not the fountain. Not yet, for the water was not endless. It dripped, it pooled, it emptied. The fountain they sought was eternal, flowing without end, carrying the promise of youth itself. The captain stood, his gaze steady, his breath slow. The labyrinth had not given them the prize. It had given them only the path. And the path stretched onward, deeper still into shadow, where the whisper of water called faintly, just beyond reach. The sailors rose, weary but unbroken, their torches lifted high, their eyes fixed upon the dark. The labyrinth pressed close once more, twisting, shifting, guiding them forward. And in the silence, in the drip of water, in the echo of their steps, they felt it. The fountain was near, not yet seen, but certain, waiting at the heart of the island, guarded by time itself. The chamber of echoes, the labyrinth narrowed again, its walls folding inward until the sailors felt the weight of stone pressing on their shoulders, the air thick and damp in their lungs. The torches sputtered as though the air itself resisted. Flame, their glow shrinking, their smoke curling low to the ground. Still, they pressed on, each step measured, each breath steady. For though exhaustion clung to their limbs, they felt it in their bones. The fountain was close, the path curved. Sharply, then opened suddenly into a vast chamber. The sailors halted, their eyes widening, their breath catching in unison. The chamber was unlike any they had seen before. Its walls were carved smooth, polished by hand, though no tool marks remained. They gleamed faintly in the torchlight as, though they were not stone at all, was something older, something that drank and reflected light in equal measure. The ceiling rose high, vanishing into shadow, its vault echoing with every step, every whisper. And at the center of the chamber stood a circle of pillars, each tall, each unbroken. Their surfaces carved with spirals so deep they seemed to move in the shifting glow. The sailors entered slowly, their boots echoing against the floor, their torches casting long shadows between the pillars. The air was colder here, sharp against the skin, carrying a stillness so deep it felt like breath held by the earth itself. Then came the sound, a whisper, faint at first, no louder than the rustle of leaves, then another from the opposite side, then another still, above them, below them, around them. Whispers rising and falling, overlapping like ripples in a pond. The sailors froze, their hearts racing, their torches trembling in their hands. The whispers grew clearer, not words at first, but tones, low, sorrowful, heavy with longing. Then, slowly, voices formed, layered and many. I sought it once, so close, I was so close. To drink, to be young again. The water was not mine. The fountain does not forgive greed. The sailors turned in circles, their eyes wide, their ears straining, but no figures appeared. The chamber was empty, empty but alive. The voices belonged not to the living, but to the past. Echoes of those who had come before, carved into the stone itself, lingering in eternity. The captain stepped forward, his torch lifted high. "Show yourselves," he called, though his voice wavered. The chamber answered with silence. Then, softly, one voice rose above the rest. "You will find it. But you must ask yourself, will it be enough? Will you drink, or will you turn away?" The sailors exchanged uneasy glances, their eyes dark with doubt. They had crossed seas, braved storms, endured the labyrinth. The fountain was the prize, the goal, the dream, and yet the voices warned of cost. The promise of eternity was not gift alone. The captain's gaze lingered on the pillars. Each was carved with figures, not triumphant, not joyful, but bent. Lo, their faces heavy with sorrow. Some reached for water cupped in their palms, but the water turned to sand. Some lifted chalices to their lips, but their faces twisted as though the taste was bitter. And some stood still, empty-handed, their faces calm, as though they had chosen to turn away. The chamber grew colder, the whispers sharper, The sailors huddled close, their breaths shallow, their eyes darting, but the captain steadied them, his hand raised, his voice firm. These are echoes, they are not chains. We are not bound to their fate. The voices swelled, rising like a tide. You will drink, you will fade, you will be forgotten. Then, as suddenly as they had risen, the voices fell silent. The chamber dimmed, the torches steadied, the echoes faded into stillness. Only one voice lingered, softer than thee. Rest, a whisper almost too faint to hear. Beyond this chamber lies the fountain. But remember, youth is not eternity. Eternity is not peace. The words sank into the sailors' hearts, heavy as stone. They stood in silence, their breaths slow, their thoughts unspoken. For the warning was not of distance, nor of danger, but of choice. The fountain would not be guarded by swords, nor by storms. It would be guarded by the hearts of those who found it. The captain lowered his torch, his eyes steady, his breath calm. He turned toward the far wall, where a narrow passage waited, its edges glowing faintly as though lit from within. He did not look back at the chamber, nor at the pillars, nor at the shadows that lingered between. He only whispered, soft but certain, "We go on." And so they stepped forward, leaving the chamber of echoes behind. The voices fading into silence, the weight of choice pressing heavier with every step. The waters revealed. The narrow passage pressed close around them. Stone walls brushing their shoulders, vines curling down like fingers from the ceiling. The air grew cooler, damp with the scent of water that had not yet been seen. Each step echoed softly, the sound hollow, as though beneath their feet ran empty caverns, vast and unseen. The sailors moved in silence, their torches sputtering as if reluctant to burn. The path bent sharply, then widened, and in that widening, the world opened. The chamber was vast, larger than any they had yet crossed. Its ceiling soared so high it vanished into shadow, its walls carved smooth as mirrors. The floor sloped gently downward, leading to a basin at the very heart of the chamber. And from the basin, water flowed. It did not trickle as in streams, nor pool as in wells. It poured endlessly, spilling upward as though rising against gravity, curling into arcs that glittered with silver light. The arcs fell into the basin, then rose again, a cycle unbroken, a circle eternal. The sound was soft, not roaring, but steady, a music like rain upon glass, like whispers carried by wind. The sailors froze at the threshold, their breaths stolen, their torches forgotten in their hands. The glow of the fountain was enough. It filled the chamber with light, soft and steady, painting the stone walls with shifting patterns, dancing across their faces. Their shadows stretched long, wavering as though the light itself moved with breath. One man fell to his knees, his hands trembling. Another covered his mouth, tears rising unbidden. For this was no trick, no mirage. This was the fountain. The captain stepped forward slowly, his boots echoing faintly against the stone, his eyes fixed upon the water. Each step felt heavier, as though the air itself pressed against him, thick with meaning. The fountain did not roar, did not call. It simply was. And in its being, it carried more weight than any crown, any throne, any sea crossed or storm endured. He reached the basin and bent low. The water shimmered, alive with light, its surface smooth though it flowed endlessly. He extended a hand, his fingers brushing the surface. It was cool, softer than silk, sweeter than rain. The glow spread faintly into his skin, running up his arm, through his chest, into his breath. For a moment, he felt it, the ache of years easing, the weight of fatigue lifting, the fire of youth burning once more. He withdrew quickly, his hand trembling. Behind him, the sailors stirred, their eyes wide, their breaths sharp. Some stepped forward eagerly, their faces lit with hunger. Others held back, their eyes dark with doubt, with fear of what the voices had warned. The captain turned, his gaze sweeping over them. "This is it," he whispered, "the fountain of youth." The chamber echoed the words, carrying them across. The stone over the water, into the silence beyond. The sailors looked to one another, their faces etched with questions unspoken. Was this a gift? A curse? A chance to begin again, or a trap to bind them forever? The fountain flowed on, steady, unbroken, eternal. It asked nothing, it demanded nothing. It simply offered. The captain lowered his eyes to the water once more. He saw his reflection, not twisted, not broken, but younger, stronger, alive with fire. Then the image shifted, and he saw himself aged, weary, at peace. Two faces in one pool, two truths in one reflection. He drew back, his breath unsteady. For he understood. The water gave not what was wanted, but what was carried within. It was no spell to erase time, no magic to deny life. It was a mirror, an amplifier, a choice. The sailors whispered among themselves, their voices rising with desperation. To drink is to live forever. To drink is to lose what makes life precious. To refuse is to return unchanged, to waste all we have risked. Their words echoed against the stone, layered upon one another, until the chamber seemed filled not only with the fountain's music, but with the sound of doubt. The captain raised a hand. The voices fell silent. He did not speak further, for no words could answer what each man must decide. The fountain did not belong to him alone. It belonged to all who had sought it, all who had dreamed of it, all who now stood before its waters, and so he turned back to the basin, the glow steady upon his face, his breath deep and slow. The fountain flowed on, eternal, unyielding, waiting. The choice of the wanderer, The fountain glowed, its waters flowing upward and downward in an endless circle, light shimmering through the chamber like dawn breaking across stone. The sailors stood silent around its edge, their torches dim against the glow, their faces lit by both awe and fear. For here, at last, the legend was real. The dream had taken shape, no longer whispers by firelight, no longer ink on maps, no longer echoes in stone. The fountain was before them, and its promise was undeniable. One sailor stepped forward first. His hair was grey, his hands calloused, his back bent with years of storms endured. He knelt by the basin, his eyes shining with tears. For me, he whispered, "This is mercy." He dipped his hands into the water, raised it to his lips, and drank. The glow spread across his skin, soft and steady, erasing lines, smoothing age. His hair darkened, his back straightened, his eyes shone with fire once more. The sailors gasped, some stepping forward, others recoiling. It worked, it was true, but the man's face twisted, not in pain, not in sorrow, but in something deeper. He pressed a hand to his chest, his breath sharp. "I feel it," he whispered. "Every moment I lived still here, but further away." He looked to the others, his voice trembling. "It is youth, yes, but it is also weight. A life stretched long, perhaps too long." Another sailor pushed past, younger than most, but still weary from years at sea. He laughed as he knelt, his voice loud in the chamber. "If life can be held forever, then why fear?" He drank greedily, cupping handfuls of water, swallowing deeply. His body glowed, his strength renewed, his youth blazing, but his eyes dimmed, shadows stirring in their depths. He straightened with a grin, yet his laughter was hollow, echoing against the stone like a note gone wrong. The others hesitated, torn between wonder and dread. Was this salvation? Or was it a chain, golden yet heavy, binding them to endless days without end? The captain stood apart, his eyes fixed on the water. He saw the ripples shimmer with faces, his own as a boy, his own as an old man, his own as he was now. The fountain showed him not what he wished for, but what he carried. The desire to keep leading, to keep building, to keep the dream alive. But also the truth that life's beauty was not in its length, but in its fleetingness. That each dawn meant something because it did not last. He knelt, his hand hovering above the basin. The water called to him, its glow warm, its promise steady. He could drink, he could remain young, unbroken, eternal. Camelot could be rebuilt, his people could follow, his story could never end. But as the thought lingered, so too did another. If life has no end, does it still hold meaning? If the story never closes, does it still matter? Behind him, the sailors murmured, torn in their own reflections. Some stepped forward, desperate to taste eternity. Others stepped back, choosing the path of age, of years measured, of endings accepted. The chamber filled with choice, with division, with the weight of decision that no map could draw, no echo could answer. The captain lowered his hand. He did not drink. He rose slowly, his face steady, his breath calm. "This water is not mine," he said softly. "It is not for us to carry eternity. It is for us to live while we can, to cherish the days we are given, and to rest when they are done." The sailors stared, some in shock, some in sorrow, some in quiet relief. The fountain flowed on, offering still, demanding nothing. Each man chose in silence to drink or to walk away. And the chamber accepted each choice, its light steady, unchanging, eternal. The captain turned, his footsteps echoing as he moved back toward the passage. He did not look again at the water, though its glow lingered on his skin. He carried nothing in his hands, yet something heavier in his heart. The truth that the fountain gave not life unending, but reflection unbroken. And he whispered too. Himself, words only the stone could hear. Eternity belongs to the fountain. Mortality belongs to us. And in that we find meaning. The fading vision. The fountain flowed on, its waters unbroken, its light unwavering, though choices had been made all around it. Some of the sailors stood renewed, their bodies strong, their eyes lit with fire once more. Others stood untouched, their hands empty, their faces steady in the acceptance of time. But whether they drank or turned away, each man carried something heavy within. The truth that eternity was not a prize to be seized, but a question that lingered long after the answer was chosen. The captain lingered only a moment longer, his gaze calm upon the basin, his breath steady in the glow. Then he turned, his steps slow upon the stone, and began to walk toward the passage. The others followed, some eagerly, some with hesitation, their eyes still fixed on the fountain as though afraid it might vanish if they turned away. And vanish it did, not all at once, not sharply, but slowly, like mist burned away by dawn. The glow of the water dimmed, the light upon the walls flickered, the sounds softened, from steady flow to faint trickle, from trickle to silence. When the sailors looked back, the basin was empty, its surface cracked, its carvings faded. The eternal waters were gone, as though they had never been. The sailors gasped, their voices rising with disbelief, with fear. Was it only a dream? One whispered, "Did we drink at all?" asked another, staring at hands that felt both strong and heavy. But those who would sit still felt youth within them, though fleeting, though fragile, and those who had not still carried the memory of its glow. The fountain had been real, but perhaps only as real as a dream that lingers long after waking. The chamber itself began to shift. The walls cracked, vines burst forth, Roots split stone. Dust rained from the ceiling. The pillars groaned. The sailors hurried forward, their torches sputtering, their hearts racing. The labyrinth twisted once more, but now it did not resist them. It guided them, pushing them toward the light, toward the air, toward escape. The captain led steadily, his hand brushing stone, his eyes calm. He felt no fear, for he knew this was the way of such places. The fountain was not meant to be held forever, not meant to be mapped or marked. It was meant to be found, glimpsed, chosen, and then lost again, so that others might seek it, so that the story might endure. At last, the sailors emerged into the forest. The canopy loomed overhead, the ruins pressed close, but the air was brighter, fresher. The path wound downward, back toward the shore, and as they walked, the forest began to change. The trees thinned, the ruins crumbled into dust, the very earth seemed to fade. The island itself was vanishing, retreating back into mist. They reached the beach just as the tide swelled, their ship waiting at the edge of the sand. They turned back only once. The island was already gone, swallowed by fog, its outline dissolving. Like smoke and wind, no ruins, no forest, no fountain. Only the sea, endless and unbroken. The sailors stood in silence, their breaths heavy, their hearts torn between wonder and disbelief. Had they truly found it? Had they only dreamed? The glow still lingered in some eyes, the weight of choice still pressed in others' hearts. But none could say for certain where the truth ended and the legend began. The captain stepped onto the deck, his gaze fixed upon the mist. He said nothing, for no words could capture what they had seen, what they had carried, what they had left. Behind, the ship turned, its sails catching wind, its bow cutting through waves. The island was gone, the fountain hidden once more, and as the sea stretched wide before them, the sailors understood the fountain was not meant to be kept nor claimed. It was meant to be sought, always sought, never ending, never certain. For in the seeking lay the meaning, and in the meaning lay the story. The wind carried them forward, the mist closed behind, and the fountain of youth remained unseen, eternal, waiting. Echoes beyond time. The sea opened wide before them, endless and calm, the horizon stretching in silver mist. Behind them, the island was gone. No shoreline, no ruins, no fountain, only waves lapping softly against the ship's hull. Only the sound of wind in the sails. Yet though the land had vanished, its weight lingered in every heart aboard. For some, it was the memory of the water's touch, the glow that had burned within their skin, the fleeting fire of youth. They felt younger, stronger, as though years had been unwound. Yet beneath that vigor was something heavier, a shadow they could not name. For eternity, once tasted, leaves a mark that does not fade. For others, it was the choice unmade, the water untouched. They carried not the glow, but the calm of refusal, the strength of acceptance. Yet even in their steadiness, doubt lingered. Had they turned away from a gift too rare to refuse? Or had they preserved something greater, something more precious than years? The ship rocked gently, carrying them forward, but silence stretched across its deck. No songs rose, no laughter rang, no voices shared tales of storm or sea. Each sailor walked alone in his thoughts, his choice echoing louder than any word. The captain stood at the bow, his eyes upon the horizon, his hand resting against the rail. The map was folded in his pocket, its ink faded, its symbols worn. He had carried it across oceans, followed it through storms, traced it through labyrinths. Now the path it promised was gone, yet he did not feel loss. For the fountain had never been a destination, it had been a mirror, and what it revealed was not water, but the heart of those who sought it. Nights passed, days followed, the ship cutting steadily across the waves. The sailors began to speak again, their voices soft, their words uncertain. They spoke of what they had seen, of what they had felt, of what they believed. And though their stories differed, though each man carried a truth unique, the fountain bound them still. It had become not just water, but story. And story, unlike life, endures. As the weeks passed, the fountain became legend once more. Some sailors swore it had given youth eternal, their bodies proof of its gift. Others swore it had been illusion, a dream conjured by exhaustion and mist. Still others claimed it was both real and not real, true and false, gift and curse. And in that contradiction, the legend grew. When the ship at last returned to harbour, the sailors stepped onto shore, changed men. They carried no gold, no jewels, no treasures to fill the king's coffers. They carried only a tale of an island in the mist, of a labyrinth alive with whispers, of a fountain that flowed with eternity. The tale spread as whispers always do, from tavern to tavern, from fire to fire, from sailor to sailor, from dreamer to dreamer. It took shape, it shifted, it grew. Some said the fountain lay deep in jungles. Some swore it hid in deserts. Others placed it at the world's edge, where sea and sky meet and time folds upon itself. Each telling bent the truth. But the truth was not lost. It was transformed. The fountain was no longer a place. It was a promise. Generations passed, and still the whispers endured. The sailors were gone, their bones returned to the earth, but their story lived on, carried in songs, written in books, painted on maps that stretched far beyond what was known. Kings still dreamed of it, merchants still hungered for it, wanderers still sought it. And so long as men feared time, so long as they longed for youth, the fountain would never fade. The captain's choice to drink or not to drink mattered less than the story itself. For in the end, it was not the water that endured, but the echo. An echo that grew louder with each retelling, until the fountain belonged not to one man, not to one crew, not to one island, but to the world. Perhaps the fountain still flows, hidden deep in mists no map can capture. Perhaps it waits for another wanderer, another sailor, another dreamer bold enough to seek. Or perhaps it exists only in the story now, its waters endless, not in stone, but in words. For so long as it is spoken, the fountain is eternal. The ship pressed onward, its sails billowing, its bow cutting across the endless sea. The stars glimmered above, the waves shimmered below, and within the silence of night, the echo lingered of water flowing, of choices made, of time suspended. The fountain was gone, yet it was also everywhere, for in every heart that dreamed of it, in every whisper that carried its name, it lived still, not as water, but as story. The fountain of youth, the sea is quiet now. The island is gone, the map is folded, the waters have stilled. Yet the fountain of youth lingers not upon any shore, not within any cavern, but within the story itself. For some, it is a promise, a dream of days unending. For others, it is a warning, a truth that life's beauty lies not in eternity, but in its passing. And for all who listen, it is a reminder that some treasures are not meant to be held, but to be sought, whispered, carried forward. Perhaps the fountain still flows, hidden in the mists of time, waiting for the hand of another wanderer. Or perhaps it flows only in our dreams, eternal not in water, but in memory. The waves roll on, the stars keep their watch, and the story rests unbroken, unending, alive.